Good evening and welcome to virtual classes organized by Board of Studies, Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. Intermediate level, paper 7B, Strategic Management. I am Anand Saxena and I shall be taking you through to chapter 4 today, that is corporate level strategy. Let me see if there are any prior questions on the question portal before I take off. Good evening, Radha. Good evening, Aditya. There are no prior questions, and I will presume that you have also received notes to chapter 4. I would be very happy if you could just confirm it right now so that we can take it from there. I hope you have received notes to chapter 4. As my great Nandishwaran. Okay. I do not know whether you have received your here we take off as far as this is concerned. You are aware that this is the framework that we have followed, that whenever we have to keep in mind the context and the process, of course, and the content of the strategy is going to focus on the corporate level strategy, and your chapter outline captures the kind of essence of the corporate level strategy, wherein it begins from left to the what you call generic level, generic or grand strategies. And okay, here. And then we move to the growth strategies. So this is how your chapter is structured. Of finding the generic and or grand strategies, one has to have reference to SWOT or TOWS, as we have already discussed in the strategy management process. And for growth, Ansoff's matrix we discussed in chapter 2. So this is the wherewithal as far as. However, I will be building on this, probably adding greater value to your understanding of corporate level strategy. And as you can see that in this particular sharing has been paused, this will be a what you call non-slideshow mode, not moving. We need to sort out this, Vijayji. Are we here? Yes. And I will have to share again, most probably. Here we are. As you can see on the right panel, the the gears that I have used as a metaphor for the corporate level strategies. So the colored gears imply the different businesses of a particular corporation. And a corporation is also a part of network, right? So, therefore, when we are talking of corporate level strategy, uh, there are two things, to be kept in mind. How is the corporation is a part, and various businesses that comprise it. So this is the dualistic definition of corporate level strategy that I am giving to you, and that will help you understand, how these decisions are taken. In a way, what I have done is that I have also introduced your study material goes. You talk about mm, you talk about, of course, corporate level and business and functional. What I have done is that I have added another layer, and that is the network level strategy. So, and the point that I am making here is that a corporation, this is the corporation that we are talking about. Let me distinguish it by adding some color to it. Just a minute here. And I can add some color to it. Okay, yeah. So now you can make out. So this is the company, and these are the several businesses of the company. And then this company is also uh, a part of the network, of the bigger network, of which it is, yeah, so a bigger network. So, it has to find its legitimacy and its place both in the larger network of which it is a part, it may be a part, and also the network of the other companies that it is kind of managing. So, that is the point that I wanted to make. And in this regard, therefore, especially the portfolio matrices that we did the other day, they become important. And, the whole issue boils of corporate strategy. And you may take your time in internalizing these elements. Allocation of resources, because there are various businesses and corporate, so a corporation can be identified as a parent, right? And the businesses can be looked at as its children, right? Parent and child, kind of relationship. So, or the sponsor and the protege, kind of a relationship, a champion and a protege kind of a relationship. So you have to allocate the corporate resources among the various businesses. And these resources are not only capital resources or the money resources, but also, your manpower. Where are you going to put your best persons, best managers, in the in the corporate uh, you know uh, repository, right? So so one is the allocation of resources, how a corporation is going to allocate its resources. Taking you back to cost accounting, for example, how would you allocate your capital among the various business alternatives or capital budgeting decisions as you would have taken probably in finance, right? And the capital budgeting decisions, especially in competitive scenarios, are not only driven by the net present value, for example, or the profitability index of a particular business, because a strategic decision that needs to be taken is that whether to, for example, keep the business or not. Is it not? So therefore, for example, make or buy, right? So rather than having a company to manufacture a particular component, for if you happen to be an automobile company, whether it will pay to buy that component from some component manufacturer or OEM manufacturer. So so this allocation of resources, although it happens internally, but it happens on the also on the principles of functioning of the capital market, right? So you really your businesses are competing as if it were in the capital market to attract the corporate resources for their future growth or diversification or whatever. So the four pillars of corporate strategy comprise, to begin with, allocation of resources. And I hope I have been able to elaborate this idea adequately well for your understanding. And the second issue is that of organizational design. I mean to say, of course, a divisional structure will come to your mind, or a SBU structure will come to your mind when there is a headquarter and then there are SBUs. So the issue is how centralized is the structure, how close is the monitoring by the headquarter, and second is that what is the synergy between the various SBUs. So whether ideally, each SBU should be in a way cross-selling each other. So that is what is necessary in terms of the organizational design. And as you can see, that this design has to come, from the above, and that vision. So ultimately, everything is a matter of vision. How you look at the your total, how you look at your business, or how you look at your company as a whole. In terms of, for example, Miller and Modigliani, framework, whether each business is valued separately, or the business house or the business group is valued in totality. So if it is so, then what are the synergies among the various businesses? This is the question that emerges as far as corporate strategy goes. So I hope the notion of organizational design is also clear to you when it comes to the articulation of corporate strategy. Okay, let me see if there are any questions right now. Okay, notes are there. Video is buffering. No, I don't believe that things will be at our end. I hope, Shrisha, this voice breaking could also be at the reception, at your end also, because I believe that our technical team has resolved buffering issues, and audio issue due to the fact that I tend to speak at a very fast pace. Shall I reduce the pace of my speaking? Controls, please see. The learners are complaining of buffering issues. Okay, now Nandishwaram tells me that it is now fine. Okay, so what I will do is that I'll keep my pitch high but pace slow. So maybe that will kind of resolve to an extent the buffering issues. Because if I'm pacing my voice and the network is slow, maybe then they will be in sync. Both the things will be in sync. Hmm? Okay. So, of course, the portfolio management, while we were discussing the BCG matrix, for example, we did have a look at the dynamics of strategy wherein we will continue, will be evaluating our portfolio performance in the context of, with reference to the performance of the individual businesses. And then we may have to take a call whether to drop a particular business line or whether to make more investment in the business line, and so on and so forth. So, the portfolio management is not a one-time job wherein you consciously create a business portfolio and then you kind of continually hold follow a hold strategy, and you don't change your portfolio. Portfolios need to be revised at least periodically, if not continually, but and this needs to be rebalanced, and we have to take a tough call of dropping certain product lines or SBUs and maybe adding new. So this is the portfolio management as the third pillar of corporate level strategy. And the fourth pillar of the corporate level strategy is the strategic trade-offs that arise as a result of building your portfolios and the diversity of businesses and how the risk complexion changes when we diversify our businesses, and also the mode of financing that we take, and the direction of our, for example, diversification, whether it is related or unrelated. Because if you remember, when we talked about idea of strategy as a means of earning above average return, I had underlined the fact that we cannot be oblivious to risk. Risk is inherent in any strategy. So this pillar of corporate strategy, therefore, tries to evaluate the risk return trade-offs from the point of view of the corporation as a whole, because the impact of one business unit will be felt through the entire corporate kind of structure. To cite an example, for example, when the Nestle Maggie took a hit in India because of certain issues with the food safety, its brand value worldwide took a hit. And in today's scenario of multinational corporations, therefore, these risks and returns management of the strategic trade-offs becomes very critical as far as corporate strategy is concerned. So I think I have provided a foundational, insight into the notion of corporate level strategy. I will be backing it up with a video from BCG, business development chief, when he talks about the corporate strategy. So what I am doing is that I am stopping to share my slides right now, and I am taking you to the video that I have especially downloaded from the BCG. Controls, please confirm whether sound is okay. I am now playing the video, please.
At the heart, corporate strategy is about the question.
Is the voice clear? Controls. Learners, please confirm whether you got the sound of the video. Please confirm whether you are getting the sound of the video. Please confirm. Whether you are getting the sound of the video. Okay, great. Okay. So I am here. It's a 3-minute video, in fact, less than 3-minute video, but it gives you a lot of perspective on a corporate level strategy.
At the heart, corporate strategy is about the question how the total of a company can be valued higher than the sum of its parts. And this translates into 3 questions that every CEO should have on his agenda. First, what is the vision for our company? So how should the company look like in 5 or 10 years' time? Second, and related to that, what should be our portfolio strategy? So which businesses should be part of the portfolio and which businesses should not? But also more specifically, what should be the role of the individual businesses in the portfolio? And the third question is, how do we have to adjust our corporate policies in order to achieve those targets? And this includes the capital allocation policy. So the question, how can we most effectively allocate our resources in order to achieve our targets? But also the question, how can we as a corporate center add most value to the businesses in the portfolio? And finally, the financial policy, the question, how do we want to fund our growth? What should be our target capital structure and our dividend policy? One question that we currently face a lot is the question of how to grow. And of course, corporate growth can come from acquisitions. But we also see that in many companies, there's still an enormous growth potential within the existing portfolio. And to tap this growth potential, it's important to understand that not all businesses have a right to grow, and that a company must be very selective in allocating its growth resources to its businesses. Another question that we frequently face is how to address an existing valuation discount. In particular, diversified companies frequently feel that they're undervalued by capital markets. We don't think that such a conglomerate discount is justified in most cases. But in order to address such a discount, it's important to have a very clear corporate strategy to start with, but also a very clear and consistent capital allocation policy, and to be transparent in the communication to capital markets. One thing that is really specific about the BCG approach to corporate strategy is our relentless focus on value creation. So whenever we investigate an existing portfolio of businesses or look for growth opportunities or derive alternative portfolio development options, the ultimate yardstick for success is always how much value can be created. In a typical project, we do not only leave behind a new corporate strategy and support its implementation, but we also establish a methodology for ongoing corporate portfolio management and train the organization in applying it.
So this talk by the BCG Business Development Officer, amply brings about the significance of corporate level strategy. And as you would have noticed, the issue here is that we need to look at 2 things broadly. One, what value does the corporation add to the individual businesses. Now, suppose I might be a multi-business firm, right? So think of Tata, for example. You are an engineering company. You are a software company, right? You are into retail, and the question is, what does the okay, shall we say brand? What does the brand Tata bring to the individual businesses? What is and how the individual businesses fit together in the vision of Tata Group of companies, or for that matter, Aditya Birla Group of companies, and so on. Or is it that any these groups will tend to be very opportunistic in their behavior, and whatever comes their way, they will put their money in and lend their name to the business. One thing. So I have to be very conscious in terms of what it means to be a Tata, what it means to be a Walmart, what it means to be Amazon, and so on. And I have to kind of seamlessly ensure that the idea of being a Tata or Amazon or Birla is seamlessly interwoven across the individual businesses that I have. The other is, of course, the reverse. What is the individual business contributing to the Tata value or Tata brand equity, and so on and so forth. In the BCG matrix that we have already examined, can you imagine BCG matrix, or you want me to bring in here? Let me see if I can quickly get in the BCG matrix. Okay, I have an image here, so I will bring that image on the screen. Just a minute. So I'll bring that. Okay. So we have to really kind of ask this question as to what are the individual businesses, how the individual businesses are adding to the corporate value. Some businesses, quite possible, might be adding cash flows to the corporation. No, let us look at it this way. And some businesses might be, the source of future growth to the corporation. And therefore, in terms of my capital allocation and resource allocation, policy at the corporate level, I have to see that how I leverage each business's capability toward attaining a higher valuation for my corporation as a whole. So, what I may have to do is that to use the cash generated from my cash cow businesses to fund my future growth, right? And this is how the corporate level strategy should function. The point that BCG business development president was referring to. So therefore, a very good video, 3 minute, less than 3 minute video that gives you a lot of perspective on the idea of corporate level strategy formulation. So in terms of the techniques, as you can see, ABCD matrix or in the GE thing could be could be used. So the technique does not really matter. What matters is the idea of a corporation and the kind of synergies that are built. Therefore, it's a big game. I mean, to say corporate level strategy is a big game, and requires a lot of conceptual skills at the end of the CEOs or at the end of the board of directors who sit on the pedestal of the decision making for the corporation as a whole. So so much so. Let me see if there are any questions. Recently, Nestle chairman shares a strategy to future-proofing brands and businesses. Yeah, great contribution, Mancha. I am putting this right now here on my screen, and a scholar badge for you. Certainly for this observation, Mancha. Thank you so much contributing so liberally and so significantly to the classroom discussion. And as I said, a scholar badge for Ms. Mancha. Thank you so much for such a huge value addition to the class. Thank you. Huge in terms of our discussions so far. So, this is how the vision becomes important. And for example, in Nestle's case, you can see the business vision is stated in terms of the issues of relevance, recalibration and reconstruction and so on. So, as some of its individual business, that corporate strategy comes. Shall I write it categorically for you? A corporation is and must be more than the sum of its individual. So therefore, there is something called right. Now, because you would have done a course in financial management or something like that, this is contrary to the Miller and Modigliani hypothesis, who says that is not more than the valuation of the individual businesses, right? So, because rather than the corporation making a portfolio, the investors can make a portfolio of their shares, investment in different companies. So this is the point that Miller Modigliani, kind of talks about. But apparently, if at all this corporate level strategy making has to justify its existence or its purpose, I think it lies in enhancing this corporate effect as far as the individual businesses goes. A kind of a Midas touch. The moment a particular business house touches a particular business line, there is a radical transformation. So that kind of a magic is expected when it comes to the corporate level strategy formulation. So it is, the idea is more or less, likened to the idea of managerial, economics. That means a particular corporate house is supposed to have, peculiar, management skills and managerial resources that help it run several businesses, in a magnificent way. To take you back, slightly into the history of corporate sector in India, which you would have partly studied in your history chapters. There was a concept of managing agency system in India, wherein the managing agents will preside over a big business empire on behalf of their foreign, British counterparts in England. Of course, there were certain evils of managing agency system, including concentration of economic power in a few hands. That this managing agency system was abolished after independence. But point is this, that maybe there is a kind of a management magic which the corporate level strategy makers add to the individual businesses. So the moot question, therefore, is in the corporate level strategy making, what value are we bringing to the individual businesses, or are these individual businesses better off, having been hived off, or having been run independently? One thing. And of course, so we have also said that it's not only this, it is also about managing the synergy between the various businesses. So you have the various businesses, and each business kind of reinforces the business of the other unit. That's the kind of synergy that you bring about. So, so therefore, this idea of corporate level strategy, I wanted to build from bottom up because I believe that it is key to developing your understanding further. Let me check if there are any questions so that I may take up the same for discussion. Okay. Thank you, Mansha, for your kind words. Actually, uh, learners like you add a lot of value to the classroom, and hats off to you for being such a participative learner. And I can foresee the making of a top level manager in you. So keep going. That is very exciting, actually. Okay. Uh, Let us proceed, further. Of course, the chapter talks about the typology of strategies, and which we have also mentioned, how we could look at strategic management across the life cycle of a corporation, and that's what this particular graphic in your study material talks about. And what it, I think, beautifully does is this: that at one point, in one table, it elaborates the four generic strategies of available to a corporation. And the the meaning of these strategies is clear, and as you can see that when it comes to stability, so you're managing, talking about portfolio. So you believe that existing balance is okay. We are not going to disturb the existing balance. So that's one thing. So in expansion, what you think is that, okay, within the portfolio there are certain growth centers that are under kind of represented, and we need to focus on the growth of those segments, and thereby the growth of the corporate portfolio as a whole. So it goes like this. And the retrenchment, as corporate strategy, actually means that we are trying to hive off the flap and maybe concentrate around our core competence and therefore rationalize or rebalance or right size our business portfolio. The word combination is not a separate strategy, although the term combination in commercial language is used in a different sense as well. Um, the concept is called business combinations, right? So it's a slightly different concept. But here it means that because there are different businesses, a corporate level strategy actually ipso facto will be a combination. That means for certain businesses, it will be following growth. For certain businesses, it might be following stability. For certain businesses, it might be, for example, constrained to retrench or something like that. So that means we must understand that the environment, the point that I have always been making, that the environment facing corporation, is very, very diverse and complex. Now, as many business environments as the number of businesses you have in your portfolio, and then the larger socio-economic and political context in which the business is operating, and even the international context in which the business is operating. So, in such a scenario, therefore, in fact, every probably corporate level strategy formulation is actually a combo. It's a combination of several business level strategies. So combination is not a separate strategy. It is actually, an expression to indicate that a corporation may be following different strategies for different businesses. So that's the only thing. The other concept, the other reference to the idea of business combination that I just mentioned, these business combinations include such ideations as lobbying and chambers of commerce and industry associations, wherein the corporations try to exert an influence on the policy making and try to elicit favorable policy responses from the government and ensure B2B kind of collaboration and cooperation. So business combinations in that that context mean this. But as far as our context is concerned, the context of this particular chapter is concerned, our emphasis here is on the fact that a corporation may be simultaneously pursuing growth, retrenchment, and stability across different business lines. So I hope the definitional aspects are clear to you. Any questions? Okay. What if the company is not capable of doing competitive strategies? Yes, Tejas, it is a good question because we have already seen in the typologies of strategy. Then we may go for collaborative strategies, and we may, forge a kind of a understanding with the other corporations and rather than competing, converting what is called preempting or co-opting the competitors as partners, right? This is very much possible that you can instead of competition, you may go for either strategic alliances or formal joint ventures, and things like that. So it is eminently possible. In fact, for some very large, projects, these things are actually happening. In fact, even in the case of small firms, you know, actually, your syllabus does not talk about the theories of, for example, theories of strategy, so much. But what happens is that the small firms, for example, you would have heard of the idea of consortium, businesses. So, such an apex level organization such as NSIC for the small scale industries, encourages this kind of consortium marketing, wherein a big project is, collectively bid rather than small companies competing with each other and annihilating each other. So, and then that project work is distributed among the coalition partners or the consortium partners. So, there are ways of getting around even the competition, and I think that's the beauty of business management or strategic management, wherein you are always on the lookout for the solutions to the problems that you are facing, rather than getting bogged down by those problems. So the collaborative strategies are very much in place. In fact, the the lexicon of business management is now changing more and more towards cooperation rather than competition, especially the competition which becomes mutually annihilating, and the competition which becomes counterproductive to the consumers, and so on and so forth. So I hope it is clear. Okay, Vaishnavi asked me to elaborate the 6 R's pointed out by Mansha in the Nestle strategy. So relevance is clear. The business must be relevant to the corporation and its brand image, and so on and so forth. And the resonance I would see as synergy. That the businesses must resonate well with each other, and then they must add value to the corporation as a whole. And resilience, that there can be occasional setbacks. So the corporation must come in strongly to lend a supporting hand to enable the business unit to bounce back. I think in terms of the resilience, Nestle Maggie is a great example. They had almost hit the floor when this Maggie thing happened in India. But how the corporate resolution, resolve, and support, came in handy, and Maggie was resurrected, and I think it has almost hit its pre-crisis, kind of level, and so on. So Maggie brand continues to enjoy a lot of value, and the the renewal is clear that we have to keep adding newer products to our portfolio, so as to always remain green, is it not? And we have to keep recalibrating our businesses vis-a-vis competition. For example, if you remember, when Maggie was hit hard, then the top ramen tried to fill in this slot, and then came Yippee noodles of another company, I think ITC or something like that. And how so you have to, competition would change, because it is foolish to presume that the competitors would not be doing anything. Rather, they will always like to take advantage of your fallouts, and of course they will try to consolidate their positions. So it is always wise to keep recalibrate your businesses, and of course rebuild and reconstruct. So beautiful ideation of the corporate level strategy. Radha talks about why does the corporate strategy, fail. Every strategy has risks. We have already talked about, and these risks can be foreseen, risks can be unforeseen, this unknown unknowns, right? So now the explanation for the corporate failures, varies, uh, from the extreme of that corporations fail because the environment turns hostile to them, or the corporations fail because the management makes foolish, mistakes, and it makes wrong moves. Usually, that when I succeed, I like to attribute success to me, and whenever I fail, I would like to pass on the accountability or responsibility to something else. Like, is it not? So it happens even in case of attribution of strategic failures. But however, I think the business persons and the business managers, they do acknowledge the fact that the successes and failures are a part of managing the businesses, and one has to, well, not all the businesses in your portfolios will be doing equally well, right? And therefore, it is a matter of balancing these out, and despite that happens, and for this we need to go to the risk framework, a point which is there in among the four pillars of strategy. So, and a point which is often ignored by the corporations, that they do not go for risk management of their enterprises, risk assessment of their enterprises, and the boards where the business decisions are ratified tend to comprise people, yes men. No, where nobody, where everybody is saying yes, then probably nobody is thinking. I talked about the significance of devil's advocate in our discussion. And Tejas, yes, you are right. The risks are various types of risk. There are governance-related risks, there are credit risks, there are market risks. So these risks are definitely there, and the companies, especially the companies which are into materials, for example, and the commodities, they are subject to huge market risks. And should the market price of the underlying products, should crash, the whole business comes crashing, is it not? And especially the multinational corporations who also deal in a lot in foreign exchange. So there's a issue of exchange rate fluctuations as far as the strategic risks are concerned. So I would quite agree, therefore, with Tejas, that businesses are subject to market conditions, and the kind of unforeseen, like COVID, how this unknown, that is COVID, has impacted a large number of businesses across the world. Of course, a few businesses have got a shot in the arm also, that you would have noticed in the study notes that I have shared with you on Unit 4. That, for example, we saw that edutech sector, got a shot in the arm, and probably has shown the greatest ever mergers and acquisition wave, in its history. And one is very skeptical in terms of whether this wave is going to stay, or is going to last, and how long is it going to last. and what is going to be the future of this edutech business when the countries and the economies start opening and start coming out of their lockdown and the online mode to the offline mode. So of course, therefore, all these factors, and that is where we need to understand the context of the corporate strategy and how the environmental changes have a bearing on the strategy formulation. You see, probably no strategy or no governance can make any business foolproof. What probably it enables you is to take the right kinds of risks and also to safeguard the corporate franchise, the corporate value in the wake of the adverse circumstances, right? So this is where probably we will take a break maybe in another 5 minutes or so that you have an opportunity to internalize the ideas of corporate strategy that we have discussed so far. And I think before I take a break and I leave you with these thoughts on corporate level strategy, I must right now bring in that idea of SWOT analysis to your contemplation, because it will add more meaning to the kind of questions which Radha has asked or Tejas has asked, because we have been saying that you have to keep in mind the genesis of the strategic choices, and which will, of course, reside both in the internal resourcefulness of the corporation as well as the external environment. So, in general, as you can see, that we are talking about generic strategies only. You will appreciate that the expansion strategies are generally SO strategies because you have the strength to leverage or to take advantage of the emergent opportunities, and of course, in the wake of the threats and the fact that you are not strong, retrenchment may be way out, whereas the other quadrants, WO or ST, may talk about a pursuit of stability. So, in a way, therefore, what we are trying to say and emphasize here is that the generic strategies and the contemplation of the corporation will be informed by the comparative strengths and weaknesses of the corporation vis-a-vis environmental opportunities and threat. So the great thing I think about strategic management is that you might step back as a matter of choice rather than as a matter of compulsion, only to bounce back. And I have used this issue of setback and come back from KBC this season, sixth season, because this was the theme of the KBC of this season, come back from the setback. So, and this I have used for turnaround strategies that we will be talking about. I have given about 10 examples in the questions that I have shared with you, and maybe I will be adding a couple of more examples and stories around the various strategic choices available to a corporation as a part of its grand strategies, and of course in sync with the portfolio analysis that we have already referred to. So I think it's a time to take a break, and therefore we will be coming back with greater discussion of the various strategic alternatives uh, uh, available to a corporation. Mm, what I am doing is that I am stopping to share here. Vijayji, we are taking a break here for 10 minutes, and I will be coming back um, at 7:10. Okay, welcome back as we resume our session. Uh, Let us take a quick look at the test drive that we had put up in notes to chapter 4. And of course, I have already mentioned that expansion is a um, SO strategy, and in terms of Tau's matrix, it will become a max-max, strategy, right? So this is how you apply the techniques to the realities of a situation. Can we quickly, therefore, go for the test drive that we had uh, given in the uh, notes to the class. Let me take first 5 so as to see whether you have been able to internalize the basic ideas about the strategies, competitive as well as collaborative, or not. Uh, Here we are. What I'll do is that I'll scale this up, the font size, I mean to say, and I would be very happy if you can quickly respond to in. The Starbucks partnering with Barnes and Nobles to offer in-house coffee shops. What kind of strategy would you attribute this to? Let's see. Strategic alliance. Perfect. Manisha was first to respond to this, and absolutely spot on. So this becomes a strategic alliance, and the Zara owners shut down 4,000 stores worldwide. Of course, you know it's a COVID story, and it's definitely a retrenchment strategy. Am I right? Let me see if there are any responses. Slide is not shared, is it? Just a minute, let me confirm it. I think I was sharing the slide. No, I am not sharing the slides. Okay, so sorry. I am coming back to the slides. It's Tuesday. Yeah, I hope you are able to see the slide now. So the second question was, Zara. So what is your call on this, Zara's closure? Of course, it is retrenchment. But interestingly, you will see Zara India continues to grow. They have added, I think, 4 stores, probably because of the fact that they had got into an agreement with the malls or whatever, prior to COVID, and they have honored that promise, and probably India's story is different from European story, and so the grand strategy is of course retrenchment in view of COVID, but in select territories, as you can see, Zara is growing too. So you can look at the corporate strategy not only across the product lines but also across the markets, right? So in because different markets may be in different situations, and therefore your and that's why if you look at divisionalization of the firm as per territory, because the territory becomes the key driver of competitive success, right? So maybe Indian market continues to be promising, and Amazon you are very right. It's an expansion spree, And the Star Alliance, because the name seems to communicate the answer to the question, because you know that the Star Alliance is um, the biggest alliance among the airlines of the world, and of course, idea is to provide seamless service to the international travelers. Albeit, of course, you know that the aviation industry, you know, at large has been, at the receiving end, and therefore it continues to struggle to bounce back to the levels before the pandemic. And within the aviation industry, you will realize that certain airlines have tried to uh, turn around their fortunes in the COVID. For example, I think it is SpiceJet, for example, has introduced exclusive cargo facilities uh, because to provide logistic support during the COVID. So that's how different firms respond to the prevalent environment. Byju's again, because the word acquires is there. Yeah, Nandishwaran, you are spot on, and therefore you are absolutely correct when you say the strategy of the airlines. And Baiju, apparently acquisition is usually a growth strategy, if I may say so, Rishika, because you know that as a result of COVID, the edutech industry has grown phenomenally, and Baiju's strategy of therefore of acquisition of the new businesses, and in fact, Akash, business is very futuristic, because Akash specialized in offline coaching for engineering and medical services, and keeping the eye on the post-COVID scenario where you might have to go even offline. I think Baiju's acquisition of Akash, signifies quite a few things. So yeah, Vaishnavi, you are absolutely spot on. So and these examples, I'm sure you will keep in mind. In your exams, you see, you will not get the company names, and that you will get fictitious names, right? But once you have gone through these cases, this will register in your mind, and you will be able to recall this when you are answering the questions. In answering the case-based questions, actually mostly you will be asked the MCQ type. You have to choose the alternative among the answers. But wherever you may have to describe, for example, then you may refer to companies that in a similar case, Zara did this, or Baiju did that, and so on and so forth. You are allowed to use the company names, but the examining body, that is the ICAI, doesn't have has a policy that it would not use the company names, right? So that's why you would have seen that your caselets do not mention the company names. Harsh, yes, to an extent, it is a merger, and the debate between whether a particular acquisition, a particular business deal is an acquisition or a merger, is a classical debate, and usually merger is perceived as a win-win kind of strategy, whereas in the case of acquisitions, one dominating party acquires the other. That's the kind of difference one comes across between the mergers and the acquisitions. Vaishnavi, Star Alliance is more of a network strategy, right? Wherein you become a part of a bigger network to provide seamless services to your clients or to your customers, right? And Byju's is expansion. No doubt, it's a growth strategy. But whenever we use the word expansion, please keep in mind, Vaishnavi, we are talking about internal growth, right? So let us always keep that in mind. In fact, this gives me an opportunity also to introduce certain dichotomies about the growth strategies, especially. Okay, let me do something for you here. Because that will clarify, So, no, when we talk about growth, there are, several connotations associated with it. Mm, let me do it like this. Uh, we could look at growth in terms of whether it is a internal or organic development. Um, here it comes. So whether it is an internal or organic development, that's when it is usually called expansion. And if it is external, at times we use the word organic also. Organic also. External or inorganic. Then we usually refer to mergers and acquisitions. Right? So I hope we are able to use the correct terminology when it comes to defining business growth. At times, it is said that internal and external dichotomy is also used with respect to funding. So if I am growing by plowing back of my profits, that's internally, that becomes internal growth or internal expansion. And when I have to raise additional funds from outside, and then it becomes an externally funded growth. So at times this terminology is used with respect to the mode of funding also. Shall I write it here? Okay. mode of funding. So, strategic management literature, therefore, so above with the terminologies, but we have to be conversant with the terminologies. So, because mode of funding also has a bearing on the nature of growth possible. Whenever a company decides to grow by flowing back of its profits rather than raising additional funds, then of course pace of growth is slow, and but the risks are less, and and no further dilution of the equity occurs, and maybe if it all goes well, then uh, the equity appreciates both in capital appreciation as well as dividends, right? So therefore, growth has got different connotations. Let me see. Yeah, so I think that is it, and I hope the meaning is clear to you all. Yeah. Okay. Moving on to the growth strategies, and the point that we left our discussion. Uh, the uh, the uh, the growth, tends to be a SO kind of a framework. There can be defensive growth also. I would not rule out that, especially in the wake of a competition. The uh, kind of response of the micro, small, and medium enterprises. Uh, you know, uh, Forming a kind of an alliance in the wake of competition from abroad. So it is quite possible. So there can be a defensive growth also, but usually it is associated with the SO kind of alternatives. So the more important thing that I would like to emphasize here is the relative risks and rewards associated with each strategic choice that we must keep in mind. And the the as you can see, if we are going for organic growth, uh, you tend to get a higher PE ratio, and therefore because it is coming from inside, internally, there are no contradictions as would happen when you acquire a company. For example, Tata experienced lots of cultural differences when it acquired Chorus. And even in the case of Jaguar, Tata faced cultural differences because the work culture in England is different from the work culture in India, and it led Tata to quip that British culture is inimical to growth, right? So therefore, organic growth, tends to be, uh, free from cultural thing, and it also provides opportunity to the managers to grow along with the firm, right? And certainly, it causes lesser stress. Uh, but as you can see, the flip side of the organic growth is that it tends to be slow, and a smart, agile competitor may overtake you overnight, and you might be left grasping. Is it not? And therefore, you will not be able to kind of survive, especially when your competitors take the inorganic route. But ultimately, it is a matter of values, founder values. Certain founders believe that they have to grow as much as possible organically. This was the philosophy of Havel's group also. And they did not go for aggressive growth, especially in organic growth, until very, very recently, right? I think their earliest acquisition was Sylvania, and I think Sylvania they relinquished within 4 or 5 years, and then the recent acquisition that I remember of Havels is that of Lloyd, and they launched the Lloyd air conditioners and so on. In fact, Havel's case represents a good story in the business growth. And in fact, whenever we are looking at corporate strategy, we need to go into a kind of we have the cap of a business historian, because the growth today's big companies also started small. So we need to kind of traverse the path that they took, in becoming big and becoming a phenomenon today, because that story unfolds, and the story reveals the kind of strategic planning and so on. Remember when we were talking about emergent strategies and planned strategies, we noticed that very many business houses of India post-independence actually did not have any strategy. They were just driven by whatever licenses came their way. And now we can see that they were diversified business houses. No, so therefore, whereas in the case of Havel, we realized that theirs is a very systematic, path of growth that Havel's has followed. I know this because I happen to interact with the, second generation of the third generation of the entrepreneurs from the family. So, Havel's started their business in switch gears, right? And they were in the backyard of the house, right? And from the backyard of the house to the drawing room and the bedroom of the house, in terms of fans and air conditioners and appliances, this has been a story. And I think I have also put up a question on Havel's in the notes on chapter 4. Have I? Did I mention Havel's or not? I think I mentioned, yeah. So market share in the fan segment back with new launches, right? So you see that Havel's story, therefore, is an interesting story. Nisha asked me to explain once again the BCG matrix. Yeah, Nisha, I will be very happy to respond to your query, even at the expense of repeating it for the benefit of others. You see that if we look at a corporation as a portfolio of businesses, we can identify 4 types of businesses in the portfolio of a corporation. Right. One is the faithful businesses where market growth is low, and your share is also low, but you are clinging on to the business because of whatever sentimental value that you like. Cash cows tend to be the businesses where you are in a dominant position to extract as much cash from those businesses. Idea is to blow back that cash into the businesses of the future, which are called either question marks or the stars. So idea is if I look at my business portfolio, my objective is to enhance my portfolio returns and manage my portfolio risk. So the idea of portfolio matrix comes from, as I said the other day also, a portfolio of securities, a la Markowitz. Huh? So wherein you try to ensure that at any point of time there are businesses in the growth trajectories for you, futuristic businesses for you, and of course there are because you need cash. That's the point. If you remember, we saw BCG matrix video the other day. The company needs cash, and it needs to generate cash, is it not? And then it has to invest in businesses. So within the portfolio, if you can ensure that there's a continuous stream of inflows and outflows into profitable and greenfield businesses, that is an awesome thing to happen. So therefore, BCG is not only a static, kind of a matrix. It is a dynamic matrix, and you are moving very fast. You are trying to move very fast, by investing in your question marks and turning them into stars, and so on and so forth. So that is what is meant by BCG matrix. I hope I have been able to clarify the concept yet again for the benefit of all. Okay. So I was talking about the Harold story. So by and large, organic growth, and then comes the next generation dynamism comes in, wherein you also try to acquire. And then there's a story, man, there's a pattern, kind of emerging, systematic from the backyard of the house to the drawing room of the house. So you are systematically adding the products to your portfolio, and therefore trying to capture a major chunk of household expenditure on durables, right? So there's a strategy, there's a thought process behind it, and one can really actually relate it when one looks at Havel's group historically, right? So therefore, in understanding of strategy management, uh, you have to wear, the hat or the cap of a historian to be able to, unravel or unfold the story as if it were. Okay, moving on. So we did talk about, the rewards and risks of growth strategies, because we need to be wary of the issues that pertain to our strategic choices, right? So there is a definite need to look at the. Likewise, we can look at to the inorganic growth, and as you can see that there are pluses, because you can it enhances your speed of entry into a new market, and if you acquire a competitor, so you are in a way annihilating the competitor, and you can in a way buy in the management, because the acquired company, some managerial resources you can leverage. So there are potential benefits of an acquisition, but there are sizable degree of risks too. And I would like to highlight the cultural shock, which people tend to undermine. But this is probably one reason why I think the success ratio of acquisitions is definitely less than 50%. So, one would say that, okay, 50% M&As succeed and 50% fail. No, I think the larger percentage of acquisitions fail rather than succeed. And the essential reason behind this is, as one would like to put it, inability to I will put it at inability to integrate. So we are not able to integrate the acquired business, and that becomes a huge issue in the success of the mergers and acquisitions. But nevertheless, businesses go on taking risks. As I said, mergers and acquisitions do happen. I just mentioned the edutech industry, which has recently seen tremendous amount of mergers and acquisitions. And you know that the market for mergers and acquisition is actually the market for corporate control, right? And at times, this war for corporate control tends to be exaggerated and with its own attendant risks. Uh, Especially when these acquisitions are in unrelated areas, right? So, in general, therefore, as you were watching the BCG video that I showed at the commencement of my this session, that there tends to be a kind of conglomerate discount. So when the companies diversify into unrelated areas, the investors tend to discount the market capitalization substantially because of the obvious doubt about the capability, managerial capability of the firm to organize or to run a different business altogether. Is it not? So therefore, the inorganic growth, especially in the unrelated fields. And if you look at the corporate scams and scandals, and especially the corporate governance, not scams and scandals necessarily, but the corporate governance failures, you will realize that very many failures are attributable to indiscrete growth via mergers and acquisition by the firms, right? For example, Kingfisher Airlines acquisition of Deccan Airways, really contributed to Kingfisher's fall, apart from other, operational issues, right? So therefore, the thing is that mergers and acquisitions is a risky business, and it adds to the risk complexion of the firm, and especially if it is in unrelated areas, then it tends to be much more problematic, and therefore we need to weigh this risk of inorganic growth against the potential benefits that it provides. Let me see if there are any questions. Vaishnavi, the question whether acquisition is friendly or hostile, very difficult to answer because you have to go into the motives and the intentions of the parties. Having said this, let me also place on record and for your benefit, we have done some work on mergers and acquisitions, overseas mergers and acquisitions, and we did evaluate the motives of the acquiring firm. So acquiring firm is resource seeking, asset seeking, market seeking, right? So there are, you are right, Shubrata, DHFL is also a case in the point. So, so not much discussion is done about the motives of the acquired company. I think at times the acquired company also tends to, take its own strategic considerations. When it allows itself to be acquired, or when it seeks a merger with a company. Now, you might say that the friendly acquisition may be called a merger, and the unfriendly merger may be called a predatory acquisition. Very difficult. How will you attribute OBC Bank and a PNB Bank's merger, which is an acquisition or a merger? Very difficult. So therefore, uh, one has to really see, why this happens. I think Voda idea merger, Mansha, I think is essentially to withstand the competition, from Geo, and together these two companies try to. Of course, there's a story. Voda, Hutchinson, SR, group. Vodafone's presence in India has been a checkered, kind of a presence. But I think finally it has come down to settle in the Indian telecom industry. This represents a kind of shakeout. When you open up a particular sector, many companies, come in the form of Me Too. Sooner or later, this shakeout has to happen. In Indian telecom industry, this shakeout actually happened because of this disruptive entry of Geo. So whatever be the cause, actually, one has to take it like that. I mean to say. So okay. So moving on, organic and inorganic growth, we have. So what we have done so far, therefore, we have looked at the generic strategies, although up to the growth level, we are already 45 minutes past 7. So I will be touching upon the other strategies too, especially the strategies pertaining to the turnaround, because turnaround, to my mind, presents a very interesting, kind of a scenario, and therefore one needs to really look into the fact that turnaround strategies, how do the managements and the companies are able to effect the turnaround in their prospects. Before I do that, because your Hansoff's matrix, talks about the expansion path of a firm. Here I have used a elaborated version of Hansoff's strategy in the right panel. On the left panel is the usual matrix that is there in your study material, right? So I have kind of elaborated on this diversification matrix a bit. And, many a times what you do is this, that you try to go in for customer acquisition. Mind you, this diversification can happen organically as well as inorganically. So do not, and I think I have mentioned it in the notes categorically, that the typology of strategy is not a watertight compartment. So your study material also emphasizes this fact. So these are not watertight compartments, and there's an overlay of the typologies. So when we say, for example, diversification, the diversification can also occur organically as well as inorganically, and it may also, for example, involve a kind of a integration, say vertical integration, for example, as you can see in the first row of the matrix, that you become your own customer via backward integration, or you acquire the customer. Now, this happened in the case of BPO industry in India. You know that it all started with the BPO insourcing the businesses, be it accounting processes or HR processes from abroad. And from abroad, many from an aggregator abroad who will aggregate the business there and will pass on to the PPO here. So what you do is that you acquire the customer there, and in the process, be assured of businesses coming to you state. So you, in a way, delayer the value chain, is it not? So this kind of integration happens globally, as well as, of course, locally. So it is quite possible. And you know, the same product, capacity expansion, for example, if you were to internally build your capacity, your cement industry, it will take time. So what you do is that you acquire another cement plant and thereby double or quadruple your production facility. So more or less a horizontal diversification. For example, overseas speaking, Tata's acquisition of Chorus was a sudden jump in the size of Tata Steel, and from being the 50th, among the 50 or 100, players in steel manufacturing, you become overnight fifth largest, is it not? So that is how you grow. And similar becomes, concentric diversification, and the new type becomes a conglomerate diversification. So as you can see that we can expand the right quadrant, especially of the ANSOF's matrix, with respect to the functionalities that are added and the products that are added to the kitty of the firm, and that's how we can, look at the growth strategies. This, as I said, to my mind, the turnaround strategies present a very fascinating kind of a landscape, and the strategic turnaround, amplifies lots of things about the managerial resilience and come back from the setback. The point that I was trying to make. Of course, in the process, there might be certain trimming of the firm. You might have to hive off certain certain businesses, certain assets. But the idea is to put the company back on track of performance. So I think I have given some question on the turnaround strategy. Also, Tupperware. It's an interesting story of. I hope you are aware of this Tupperware story, and the Tupperware, essentially, operated through the direct marketing, right? It was what is called MLM, multi-level marketing firm, Tupperware. Lifetime guarantee of the products were very good, and lifetime guarantee, and they followed the MLM framework. It ran into it struck a kind of a wall because of this MLM framework, and its growth was stunted until the firm, chose to redefine the the scope of the business to include social media, right? So, and the idea was that your customers need not be in your physical contact, right? They may be even in your digital contact, and that's how you may expand your business. So the Tupperware, did follow this strategy of turnaround, and I think quite successfully. Yes. In the telecom sector, yes, I agree, Mansha. Firms continue to make losses. In fact, I believe all the firms are making losses, right? And in this capitalization, era, uh, the driver of the firm value is not as much profitability as is the revenue and the customers, and so on and so forth. And that's what explains Vodafone Idea merger also. So, no, the point that I was trying to make was that mm, uh, the telecom firms post geo uh, innovation, or what you call geo perturbance, try to turn around their businesses. Either by focusing on the customer value, or by, for example, adding content. Airtel has, diversified substantially into content, right? And I think Vodafone Idea are also, following that model, wherein they are going for content apart from telephony, because most telephone companies now are into content. And incidentally, it is not only the telecom companies, but also even the handset making companies, such as Apple, for example. Android, of course, is a big story, right? So therefore, uh, the companies try to make a comeback uh, in the wake of the setbacks. The setback may come from a faulty strategy. It may come back from a sudden change in the business environment. It may come from an unanticipated move of a competitor. Wherever it may come from, I think the beauty of the game of business and the game of management is that the firms do try to make a comeback. So, moving on, therefore, and kind of looking at where we are at the moment, we have seen that the corporate level strategies are such that uh, they seek to enhance the value of the corporation as a whole. And the corporation as a whole is more than the sum of its individual parts. And therefore, the task before the corporate strategists is to manage these parts in a way that there's a lot of synergy, so that the overall corporate valuation and the corporate performance, goes up. And in doing so, the corporations, they really uh, keep evaluating the performances of the individual businesses, and they keep doing the course correction, and even taking the you know inevitable step of hiving off certain SBUs, or maybe acquiring new businesses, so that the health of the corporate portfolio is preserved and is maintained. So, so in this context, therefore, it is quite possible that Certain businesses within the corporate portfolio would be experiencing growth. Some would be in the stage of stabilization, and some businesses might actually be on the wane, and the corporation might have to think in terms of getting rid of those businesses. Rest of the chapter, I think, harps on these ideas. They talk about the integration strategies. They talk, of course, they do elaborate ANSOP's growth metrics, which I have, elaborated in my own way as far as the corporate strategies are concerned. Let me see if there are any questions. Oh, Sushmita Saha says can have lectures in Hindi. I do not know because the brief to us that comes from the Institute of Chartered Accountants is that our lectures have to be in English. However, Sushmita, I quite appreciate the need for a good content in Hindi. And my experience with the learners in the Hindi belt has been that they struggle so much with the language rather than the subject. So as if the knowledge can occur only in English. It is not that. I think it is our approach to knowledge which is you know to be blamed for this. But however, as far as the classes right now, my sessions are concerned, I'm sorry to say that these classes will be essentially in English. Uh, if a company is not promoting innovativeness, then will the strategy work? I cannot say no because you will find very many companies that did not innovate for a long and thrived on their monopoly rent. Huh? In the automobile sector, the Ambassador car, for example, for umpteen number of years, it thrived on just one model of car simply because your competitive situation, the base conditions were favorable to you. But when the sector was opened up, liberalized, then you know that what happened to Ambassador car, right? So as I always say, in management, it all depends. If your environment allows this rent-seeking behavior, permits this rent-seeking behavior, and what you call prevalence of monopoly power, then of course whether you innovate or you do not innovate, you will continue to survive and thrive. Uh, but in general, however, I think uh, in a free market scenario, I think the choice or alternative to innovativeness is very, very narrow. So the companies really need to innovate and to be able to differentiate and thereby succeed in the competitive environment in which they operate. So a lot will depend, as I said, on the type of business environment where you flourish. And you would have noticed that it has been the story more or less wherever competition was liberalized. We have seen it in the goods sector. We have seen it in the services sector, be it banking and insurance, right? So the uh, the emergence of competition, uh, I think, necessitates that you innovate. Having said this, uh, if the competition is only for uh, you know the uh, on amassing and acquiring a monopoly power, then even that competition doesn't help much. Now, for example, we realize that the banking sector liberalization hasn't helped the public sector banks, and they continue to go into red. And as a result, we had to resort to this first injecting more capital into the banks, and then their mergers. And this includes even the private sector banks also, is it not? So uh, as I said, of course, the business environment does not remain same, and the changing business environment, and as Manisha said, probably post-COVID business environment necessitates that the firms really have a relook at their business. Uh, you know. Now, for example, hospitality industry, that it has received the biggest hit. Now the question is, what kind of innovation should hospitality industry do to thwart or to minimize the adversarial impact of COVID? Likewise, what type of innovation should the aviation industry do to be able to come out of the red? So these challenges will continue to haunt, and you know uh, we will see more stories of success coming out in the years to come. Uh, Certain sectors could find their resilience through technology. For example, education sector also took a big hit, is it not? Students, kids were thrown out of schools all of a sudden because of the imposition of the lockdown. But here, the technology became a savior, and the organizations who could, manage this challenge and could move fast enough, could ensure that the students and that is their customers or the clients, do not move away, and they remain there, and their revenue base continues to kind of survive. For example, the Institute of Chartered Accountant moved fairly fast in the wake of COVID scenario, and took recourse to this online classes, which helped it retain the students. I really do not know, because you would be the better judge whether this online coaching has kind of helped you, uh, you know, negotiate with the curriculum better, and what is going to be your response when the normalcy comes back, and we take the offline route. Yeah, Shubhita, these are the trends. Uh, but what one has to really see is that whether the extant evaluations of the e-commerce firms and edutech platforms, these valuations will stand the test of the times. That is important. One reason for not uh, being very pessimistic about the future of these technology businesses is that in very many instances, these businesses were there before the break of pandemic. Zoom was there before the pandemic. Google Meet were there before the pandemic. but they were, being used very selectively, across maybe B2B sectors. And in the B2C sector, you only had, occasional users, and you will measure their use on per annum basis. And today you talk about DAUs, daily average users, and they have been on the rise as far as these platforms are concerned. And that is why probably you see so much rush as far as the edutech is concerned. I think uh, time to close the session. If there are any specific queries, of course, I would be very happy to take the queries. But summing up the whole argumentation of today's session, I would like to emphasize the point that whatever is the level of strategy formulation, we must not lose sight of the fact that we have to look at the dynamics within the firm as well as dynamics of the business environment. And in this context, SWOT assumes, its significance because of the reason that a corporation operates in various businesses. Yes, individual businesses will have respective industry environments, but there is an overarching macro social, economic, political, technological, and ecological environment that impacts the various businesses of the firm at the same time, but of course in different measures. So therefore, it is about juggling of the individual businesses in the portfolio of the corporation, and therefore, when the environment is benign and full of opportunities, the corporation as a whole may aspire to be expanding. What does it mean? On an average, the corporation would be expanding because the number of businesses registering growth will be more than the number of businesses that would not be growing. Is it not? And it is a signal for the firm to cash cow the non-growing businesses and invest into the growth businesses. So please try to understand uh, uh, this SWOT analysis in this particular perspective. When the environment is hostile and it is full of threats, then of course you will have to see that your value is not eroded. You have to try very hard to ensure that the overall corporate value is not eroded. So maybe you will sell off the businesses in the non-growing locations. Zara we talked about, and rather focus on the businesses on those locations where the business growth is possible. So now you have to rationalize. Now the word rationalize is very important. There's a word ration involved in it. The capital rationing is involved in it. So you have to ration your resources in a way that you are able to withstand the threats. But of course, the opportunities and the threats both they affect the strong and the weak differently, right? So you have to really assess your comparative strengths and weaknesses to be able to arrive at an optimal, business portfolio, and in such a way that the value flows are bilateral. Bilateral money, individual businesses are contributing to the corporate value, and the corporation is adding value to the individual businesses. So this bilateral flow of value, I will like to emphasize here, is important when it comes to the corporate level of strategy. bilateral flow of value is important. So this, and of course, we have looked at the various growth alternatives and critically evaluated both the organic growth alternatives and the inorganic growth alternatives. And somewhere I have also said that there is a question of values, the corporate values or the founders' values. CEO or founders' values, So, and values, money, I mean, ambition. Certain CEOs tend to be very ambitious, and this is where I do your attention to certain governance failures, where in companies on ambitious growth trajectories have grown into unrelated areas and also have used leveraged buyouts and money they have borrowed excessively in order to acquire the firms, and this has really impacted their risk complexion, and the markets have not responded favorably to these attempts. So I think on this note, I will be very happy to close this session. Uh, yeah, I'm happy that Shobha, you find our explanations relevant for your. Vijay Shankar talks about max, min, minimax, etc. in TAOs. Yeah, I will explain. Um, I will explain the TAOs matrix. Let me see if I can quickly go to TAOs. Just a minute. Here we are. TAOs is here. Yeah. Here it is. TAOs. In fact, if you may remember that I had drawn your attention to the fact that TAOs matrix and SWOT matrix, they use the same variables, namely organizational strength, organizational weaknesses, environmental opportunities, and environmental threats. And, when you are operating from your strength position, an environment is full of opportunities, you will go for maximize the maximum profit, right? Max. See, and however, when environment is full of opportunities and your weaknesses are there, you will try to minimize the maximum loss, right? And if you're operating from the strength position, in spite of the environmental threats, you will maximize the minimum profit, right? And when environment is challenging and you are weak, of course, you will try to minimize the minimum loss. So at times, you have to see whether you have to maximize your gains or you have to minimize your losses. Is it not? Idea is, again, in the dynamic sense, in economic theory, you would have seen the shutdown point. Shutdown point comes where the firm is not earning even the variable cost. It is applicable in the break-even analysis that you would have done. So if your business has come to a level that you are not able to recover even the variable cost, it's a point of shutdown, right? But so long you are meeting the variable cost, then you will hope for the conditions to improve in the future and thereby recover the fixed cost and also the target profit. So I hope this analogy from the break-even analysis will help you understand the strategies implied by the TAOs matrix. You see, SWOT doesn't specify the principles of strategy, formulation. TAOS does that. This is the point that I had emphasized while elaborating these ideas. Vaishnavi asks me, what is a strategic alliance? Strategic alliance is is a network among the firms wherein there's no explicit intercorporate investment. So, for example, I do not know. I am forgetting. Earlier, Pizza Hut had a strategic alliance, I think, with Coca-Cola. Now they have changed it to Pepsi, or maybe the reverse has happened. I'm not forgetting. So what is happening is that wherever pizza outlets are there, they will be selling this particular drink. So it becomes a kind. And we talked about Starbucks and Barnes and Noble. So what you do is that, in fact, if I remember correctly, in South Africa, Nestle and Coca-Cola entered into a strategic alliance because Coca-Cola is into cold beverages and Nestle is into hot beverages. Forget that iced tea, but by and large, Nestle is into coffee, right? So hot coffee. So they entered into this kind of alliance. So what you are trying to do is that it's a kind of a partnership without any formal arrangement of intercorporate investment. And I think Manisha said that post-COVID scenario, I would like to see more of cooperative strategies among the firms in the post-COVID scenarios, right? Subhrata asked rather a question on my qualification. No, I do not hold a PhD in economics. I hold a PhD in entrepreneurship. That is my area of a PhD. I think I will close this session. Let me once again revise the the question panel. I don't think that there's any question that no, you see, Harsh, every strategy, as I said, has its own risk factors. You know, who knows that your strategic partner may turn into your competitor, right? So it is not that strategic alliances are without any pitfalls. They are without pitfalls. And in the absence of a formal arrangement, it would be very difficult to legally enforce, the obligations on the other party. So there are issues even with these strategic alliances. But I think what COVID must, educate us is the futility of cutthroat, competition, and the benefit of what you call cooperation. So I hope, therefore, I have been able to attend to all your queries, and that is where I would like to rest today's session until we meet the day after to discuss business level strategies. Vijayji, we are calling off the session now.